Okay. Well, welcome to the read, plan, and outline of a CFE case. And my name is Tauzer Dalal. I'm a CPA mentor, and a trainer. I've done a bunch of webinars for prep over the years. There's a little bit of information about myself. I'm kind of going to go through this part a little bit quick. One main thing, obviously, interpretations here are my own. I've taken some adaptations, obviously, of the case, comments by CPA Canada, and my general observations. So that's kind of a disclaimer there. There are going to be three main objectives today that we're going to run through. And actually, it's going to be pretty fast pace because I'm going to try and pack a lot of information in this for you. One is just some general tips from CPA Canada that I have seen either them publish or picked up from them. Then we're obviously going to read the ESL Chang case. And I'm going to go into a very in-depth outline, a read and outline. And I'll explain to you why, okay? And how to identify using case facts the various AOs and kind of create my version of an outline. And then there will be general parting comments on case writing. So the key thing is as you read the narrative. So now these are just general tips on, how to read, user role, those kind of aspects. All of that information is presented on the first page, generally, and describes, okay? So what is your role generally? Who's a user? And some of the key requirements are identified on the first page. And you'll also see that from the ESL Chang case. They're pretty well directed now. And the narrative usually includes things about timing, your role, user. And the key thing is, your role, obviously, who the user is, and the AOs, assessment opportunities or requireds. So it's extremely important that you grasp this before you go through and read the rest of the case, because you need to know what I am going to answer. What does the user want me to answer? What is my conclusion going to be before I proceed? Quick note, role, user, objective, and issues. Your role will dictate, obviously, the perspective that you're writing from. And the more you understand it, the more it'll become ingrained. And over the years, you'll see different roles. Traditional auditor, whether you're internal, you're doing some management work, consulting work, they could put you in all kinds of different situations. Or even within a case, they can ask you to do two different things. Users, who are the main players, are there, owner, obviously, or the owners, bank, blah, blah, blah. That kind of stuff will play in. User objectives, are there any biases, manipulation, or whatever? And then there's obviously the narrative, and the narrative will actually give you information along with your financials and the numbers to answer your case facts, to answer your requireds. Okay, so the most important thing is clearly knowing who the user role and objective is, and this will force you to start training your mind from the first case onwards to read the case from that perspective. And as you do more cases, then you start to see the big picture. What are they trying to make me do here? What are they trying to challenge and test me? Oh, FR is there, whether there's quants, pros and cons, whatever it could be. You automatically start to see it, and then it'll be, now I'm going to use my case facts and apply to answer that. Okay? And then as you identify each issue in your plan, create a heading. So I call it different things. When I talk to my students, I said, you create your AOs as like buckets or either bullets in Word. Whatever it is, FR issue 1, RevRec, FR issue 2, R&D, risk, another bullet point, and that's how you'd go. Issues can take many forms. Okay, you got to pay attention, especially to requests and statements made by the client, the partner, or the user. In this case, something that they specifically ask you to do. I know a lot of this may sound a bit trivial at this point, but in May or even before May, these are key things to focus on. Especially when you debrief, you can go back and ask yourself, did I do all of these things? Am I paying attention to this as I'm reading the case? Something you're specifically asked to do. That's relatively simple. Or something that's confusing the user. And in ESL, you'll see, he says, I'm unsure whether I should do A or B. Something the user thinks is correct, but that you have to correct. And normally those are all your FR issues. Also, there could be some quants given to you where they have done some management calculations, and then you go back and you check them and they're off. Okay. Something that concerns the user. Relevant case facts. Case facts are what help build your AO. Okay. This is the most critical part. Taking your time and reading the case facts. There are, while most case facts that impact analysis are contained in the exhibit, there's a lot of information in the narrative. So it's a blend of the two. Okay. So as you start reading, you start putting these case facts, either the numbers or the case facts like bulleted, into your actual outline. And because there is more than what you can remember, now day 3, but later on when you get to a day 2 or a day 1 case, you have to note the relevant case facts in your plan. Okay? So by having key words and case facts in your outline will help you build your actual answer. And actually you can then take the outline and then create your own answer from that. The biggest question to ask yourself, and this is always in the board report, is candidates just write stuff without asking, why am I doing it, or so what? To make sense of the case facts or what you write, so what? Why are they giving me this information? How is this relevant to me, determining whether I can recognize revenue or not? What is the trigger here? Does this, for example, in revenue, does this mean that I cannot measure revenue or I cannot collect revenue? What exactly does this case fact help? Or is this case fact telling me it's going to be a risk point, or there's some, control issue or whatever? And then that's how you take that information and then build it into your outline, bake it into your outline. Okay? The so what is, it gets you to think, do I need to discuss this further? Make it applicable to the user needs? Or am I just writing something that is irrelevant? So if the user wants you to come to a certain conclusion and you're writing something that goes beyond it or that's not relevant, your analysis, then the so what really helps you understand that. Client assertions. Okay? Client always makes assertions. The question is, you got to question it and say, is this potentially correct? You've got to either confirm it for the client, or you got to challenge it and you got to say, no, this is the appropriate way of going about discussing it. And a lot of times those will be it'll be your FR issues, most of the time. Okay? So these are some of the common tactics to remember to address the issues. So what I would do if I were you is, after we go through this, I've kind of run through this a bit quickly, take a step back later on and pay attention to some of these things, so that when you're reading the case, you say, okay, did I pay attention to what was given here? Other points, sometimes a case fact is given to you and it can actually fall within multiple AOs. Okay, so sometimes when I'm reading a financial reporting issue, that this is the way they go about recording it, blah, blah, blah. I might use that information in attempting the FR issue. I might use it in my procedures. I might use something in risks, in my SWOT, in my approach, control WIRs, whatever. It can come up in multiple areas. So again, that is why it's useful that if I read a case fact or a statement, then I take that and I basically write a bullet under those 2 or 3 relevant AOs. Another most important factor is tracking your qualitative and quantitative separately. Okay, so normally what they do is they'll say, okay, do this analysis, and they may or may not say do the pros and cons. Now you have to, while you read that, they're going to give you some information, okay? And again, you will see it in this case, and that's why I put this information in here, is are there case facts presented to me to only do the quant, or are there also case facts presented to me to actually go ahead and also do a qualitative? Because there is, I guarantee you, I haven't looked at the whole 2018 exam, but from the 15 to the 17, there is at least one day 3 case where there is no pros and cons, or even on day 2, sometimes there's no pros and cons. And people have ended up forcing pros and cons in there. So again, look at the case facts. Are there case facts there, between the 2 options or whatever, which will help me decide that there are qualitative things there that I can discuss, whether there are pros and cons for this. Okay? Because at the end of the day, if you force yourself to do a pro and con, you're wasting another 7-8 minutes doing another AO when you didn't have to. Pay attention to the notes, because in the notes, so in the financial statements, it might say note 1, note 3, note 4. That is where they will give you the key FR discussion points a lot of times. Okay? Another key thing to pay attention to is if in the beginning you're given financial statements without information on what you have to do with them, all I do is I take a 30-second scan. Okay, has anything changed year over year? Are there any new accounts? Are there any big variances? Or are they accounts that are no longer in existence? And all I do is I circle them or star them, whatever. Okay? Because later on, then as I read the case and then I see FR issues or whatever, then I can go back and say, okay, now in my narrative, I've done my case facts. Now I bang, you know what? Yeah, I saw this particular new revenue stream, and this is what it relates to this FR issue. That is how I will go back and tie it. And then the most important thing, there's always a flow to the case, to most cases, especially if you have FR. You cannot do an audit plan. You cannot do even management quants a lot of times until you do the FR issues. Let me be very clear in that. They want you to do the FR issues and you're adjusting entries, because that is used as a basis then to discuss an updated audit plan or updated management quants from there, which you will use to do further analysis. Okay, so if you guys have, for example, if you have read this ESL case, you know there are a couple of FR adjustments. So if I don't do the FR first, my materiality is going to be based on their numbers, not on the adjusted numbers. So what is the point of doing that then? So I do my FR first. Or it could be like a PM style management where they give you some management numbers, but your FR adjustments, you need to make it to the management, whatever information I've given you before you do a management quant. So remember, there's always a flow in a lot of cases. Okay? Each quant of yours has to have a purpose. If you cannot identify how the quant helps to address the user needs or to create a conclusion, make a recommendation, chances are you're going down the wrong path. So your purpose and conclusion is critical. Conclusion is what answers what the user wants. So again, if you read the ESL, he says, what is going to be my revenue? What is going to be my net cash flow? Or what is going to be my net income? Inline class or online classes. So I need to have a conclusion there as I build my quant. So I know that. Okay. Now we are going to get into the actual reading and planning of this case. The outline that I'm going to create is going to be quite extensive, and there's a reason for it. Because you're still in the early stages of case writing. Okay? And at this stage, it is extremely important for you to learn how to use the case facts and bake them into your answer. So basically, just think about it. Every CFE case, all they're doing is they're just giving you different bunch of case facts every time. Whether it's a revenue, whether it's a non-monetary, whatever, whether it's assurance, whether it's a PM, outsourcing, contribution margin, doesn't matter. Risks, IT controls or control issues, whatever. They're just giving you different things. Okay? So how you use and identify the case facts and bake them into your outline right now is extremely critical. And that is why I want to take time and show you when I read the case, what I'm thinking and what I want to put in my outline. And then as you get better at it, so a lot of people tell me, oh, if I do an extensive outline right now, then, I'm going to be out of time. At this point, yeah, maybe you're going to take a little bit more time. That's fine. You're still in May. You're not in September. In September is where you want to be, at your 27-30% reading, planning, outlining time. Right now, maybe you take a little bit longer while you learn how to use the case facts, how to interpret them, how to use them. Okay? And then as you improve and debrief each case, every time you're getting the 3-4% better. So today, if I'm taking, it's a 90-minute case. If I'm taking an extra 40 minutes, just let's say it's my first case, every time I'm going to get 4 or 5 minutes better, hopefully, as I debrief and I learn. Because now my outlining skills are getting better. The case facts that I'm picking up are only relevant case facts. And then as I get better, my outline is going to start getting condensed. And then my writing is also going to start getting condensed. I'll be writing only relevant things. And that is how you compress your time from, the extra half hour today to the allotted time for the exam. So let's start by going through the case. So ESL Cheng, the first thing I note is it's ASPE. Okay? And I put I put my comments in red as we go through. Then they're located in downtown Toronto. Right now, I have no idea why they're giving me this. But later on, I know I'm going to use it for pros and cons and my strategic. SG is strategy and governance EO. Okay? Then it goes on to tell me it offers ESL courses, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Next paragraph, what do I pick up from there? We're an audit client. It's been an audit client for many years. Michael Cheng is the owner, the president, sole shareholder. So he's my user. It's giving you the timeline, year after year end, okay, that you'll be leading the audit engagement. So now my role is, I'm obviously the audit lead. And now here they start giving you a whole bunch of different case facts. And here's where the fun starts. But again, this is on the first page where they're going to be telling you user role required. That is where you first at least identify your AOs. That is the first critical step I want you to think about. Okay? So, Evelyn says they had an eventful year. In October, they started online courses. So 3 months ago. So now, and it's a significant change. So now I'm thinking, okay, it's a new program, FR potential AO. Okay? There's a summary of my discussion in Appendix 1. Please prepare a memo to include any FR issues. So, well, there's probably already one for the online, and there may be others that they will give me. So I already know that there's going to be at least one FRAO or more resulting from this change. you should consider the impact of this change. So the impact of whatever you figure out in your FR and your adjusting journal entry on risk, another AO, materiality, another AO, approach. So again, my key is to do my FR here, so then I can show what the impact is going to be on the risk of this company, materiality and approach. Because why am I doing the audit? I'm going to do the audit to see what has changed year over year. I want to analyze the financials, the transactions, the business, the environment, the personnel, the controls. And once I do all of that, and in FR I come up with adjustments, then all of that information, all of those case facts help me build my risk, approach, materiality, my other analysis. It could be in whatever, in strategy and governance, etc. Okay? After a number of years, Michael is considering opportunity to grow the business. He's unsure. So remember I told you, client is unsure, you need to answer him. Whether he should offer additional online courses or more traditional. So again, here I'm thinking my conclusion is going to be, I'm going to do probably two quants here, two sets of quants within the AO, and my conclusion is going to be, okay, Michael, go for online or go for in class, or maybe do both, depending on what the outcome is of my analysis. Okay, I will use this information to discuss with him, blah blah blah. Also consider any strategy and governance implication. That means tell me how these opportunities are going to align, impact Michael's long-term goals. Okay, how will it affect his business, the environment, profits, things like that. Long-term, give me the long-term vision here, discussion points. So now we start off with, hold on. So we start off first. So now on the first page, page and a half, whatever, bang, they've given me all of this information. Okay, on the first page. And that's why I took a bit of time here to discuss all of this. So now we go into the individual AOs. And that's the way they set it up now. Now the exam is pretty directed. So now they're literally going to give me each of the FR AOs to deal with. And what is critical in my FR AO I need to do? I need to know my technical, whatever I'm going to discuss. I need to know all the points, okay? And I need to use case facts to either argue or agree and conclude. And then use either case facts and numbers to come up with my adjusting entry. So my first AO is right there, FR. But as I'm reading the FR, I'm also, what are my other requireds? Risk, approach, materiality, strategy, governance, whatever it is, SWOT, blah, blah, blah. It could, whatever it can be. I'm thinking, is there anything in here that I can use to discuss or to put in my outline for the other AOs? So in October, they launched 4 new online courses. Students access them via the current website. And that redirects them to an external website. Bang, right there's a flag. It's going to an external website. Are there any controls there? Are there any risks there? Whatever. Okay, so now you see how they are giving me case facts that I will use later on in discussing different things. Each online course comprises of 8 modules, short quiz. So there are 8 distinct parts to the online course. Okay. Each quiz must be completed before they go on to the next module, and they're granted a completion certificate. So here it seems like there are a lot of kind of steps that they have to go through. And because it's a new program, I'm thinking, you know what? Maybe these are things that I want to remember if I have to talk about, in my approach when I do my control testing. I have to pay attention that these might be certain risk things I want to talk about. The contents of these online courses is similar to the academy. Okay, so I'm thinking, well, right away again, and some of this comes from experience, some of them comes from just, knowing the stuff, is if the content is same, why would I not do online? Again, I'm thinking of either my pros and cons or my S&G discussion point. Classroom courses typically run for 8 weeks, delivering one module. Online format allows you to do it at your own pace. So you're doing it essentially at your own pace. So now there is no break in it. So you're not doing 1 week, blah, blah, blah. Okay? You're given a username and password. Again, privacy discussion, risk there, or privacy issues, right? Because, again, you're going to an external third party there. It's valid for 90 days. Again, another issue could be in controls. Does it really expire? Does it really only valid for 90 days? But again, reading this line tells me, more importantly, that the online seems to take evenly over 90 days. It takes place evenly over the 90 days. That's what's important here. And guys, please pop in your questions as we go if you have any. Okay? And we'll periodically take a break, and then we will yes, cannibalization will come in, don't worry. So while taking the course, students can view all the course material. Again, so why are they giving me this? So maybe I have to discuss this in my risk or my approach. How do students have access to this? Are there any controls over it? So some of this is around controls, essentially. Controls, risks, that kind of stuff. To assist students when needed, online tutor support is available throughout the online course. Okay? So there's ongoing support. And then right away I said, is there any other support that's needed? And you will see later on why, because I'm going to discuss the pros and cons of revenue being complete or not, or earned or not, sorry. And after 90 days, you no longer have access. So again, there's another discussion point. Students can register anytime. You pay the $150 up front. All of them are non-refundable. Well, I've seen some students just argue, well, it's non-refundable, so what? So now I can recognize revenue. No, I cannot, because guess what? I might have certain obligations that I need to fulfill. Right? So now here is the actual discussion, the information and the numbers associated with this. So from October to December, there were 500 of them. And again, I'm hoping you have read this because it's a little bit quick as I go through and show you how I figured this out and how I set up this little Excel quant. 500 people. So October, November, and December, you had 100, 150, 250 people. Okay? Now it's a 90-day course. 5 students didn't complete it. For simplicity's sake, let's just ignore those 5 students. Let's just go, let's just assume that line did not exist for simplicity's sakes. By December 31st, okay, students had completed 80%. So October, 80% of the people that signed up in October are done. So my revenue for October for 80% of the 100 people is recognizable. That means 20% are still in the course. And right away I'm starting to think, and so now 20% are still writing the course, and if it's evenly spread out over 90 days, and the course started in the middle of October, for simplicity's sake, throughout, if it's done, then they still have 15 out of 90 days to go. Or they have finished 75 out of 90 days. For November, again, 30% have finished it. Okay, so my 30% is going to be revenue recognized. But 70% are still in there. And same thing for December. The Academy's financial statements show 75,000. So there are 500 students and they've recognized revenue for all 500 people. So my question becomes is, what about the October 20%, the 70 for November, and the 80 for December that are still in the course? Can they recognize revenue for that or not? That has now become my FR issue here. Okay? And then the last line, Michael is surprised that a lot of them have Toronto mailing addresses, is going to be an SG point later on. So again, I'm trying to here a basic outline to go into. It's not a basic, it's a pretty detailed outline to kind of show you, and again, you condense it as you get better. Okay, so if I was writing this, I could probably do this outline in 3 bullets and be done with it. So we have recognized revenue for those that have completed, but the issue is that those that are still in there, can we recognize revenue based on POC? That is why when they said there is still some online support needed, that is going to be my challenge to deny them that revenue. Okay? So a pro for recognizing all the revenue is it's non-refundable. You have automatic access once you register throughout, no problem. But the challenge is ongoing online access support is needed. And is there other support? So right there is going to be my basic argument for performance. Is met or not? And then I'm going to go into my percentage of completion discussion. Okay, I don't know what happened there. Sorry. Oh, sorry, I just skipped a bunch of slides there. My apologies, I pressed end. Let me get down to where we were. Yeah. Okay, so now in my outline, revenue recognition issue, case facts that I'm going to build into this case. So what am I going to put into my actual revenue recognition outline? My technical FR. What are my case facts that help me address the technical? Okay, so the case facts will always help you address your technical, met or not, and why. And then my numbers will help me do my adjusting journal entry. So based on the above, I know collection has been assured, we know the measurement, but I'm going to challenge performance. And in that, I'm going to challenge performance for long-term contracts. Can I recognize the revenue for the 20%? So let's just take the October people. 20% of the people in October, okay? So there's 100 people, 100 students in October. 20% are still doing the course. So those 20%, out of 100, let's say that's 20 students. They're paid $150 each. Okay? They're still in the course. How much of the course have they not completed? They have not completed 15 out of 90 days. So 1/6 of that revenue should really be deferred. For October, I haven't completed 45 out of 90 days. So I'm going to defer 50%. Doing the math. And the basis of my argument in my rev rec is going to be because of the additional IT support, etc., that will be needed. Okay? I've just put down an entry there. So now what I'm going to show you here is how I quickly moved numbers into an Excel. Like a lot of times people ask me, how do you take these numbers that were given in either in the year we were given all the numbers in the narrative essentially. How am I going to move them into Excel? Here, bang. So I did a very, very quick and dirty Excel here. Okay? So there's October, November, December. Number of students, line 1, given. Percentage that have finished the course. So how many remain? So that's A and B. So C, how many people remain at your end? 20, 105, 200. I've not finished it. So I'm going to calculate the deferred part. You can obviously work from the entry from the other way, how many have earned, but I'm going from the deferred part. Okay? Because that's explained in the solution. So how much is the total per month for each of this? Yeah, it's Umair, it's unrefundable, but that does not matter because you still have obligations to do. You still have other costs that you're going to incur. Okay? And that's the whole point. I mean, if it was that, then why are they giving me all of this information? If you're just going to conclude recognized revenue. So then F is how much is left to finish. So how much will I defer? So 15 out of 90 days for October, and then I make it into a percentage, and then I multiply 3,000 by that. I'm assuming that the courses started mid-month on average because they did not say it started October 1st. It said there were 100 registrants in October. That's why I assumed mid-month. Okay? So that is how I get $500 for October, about $8 for November, and $25 for December. And then my total is $33,375. And if I go to the previous line, there's my entry going to be. Debit revenue. So I'm reversing out of the 75,000, roughly this much. Now remember, the solution has those 5 expired people. And I'm going to credit deferred revenue. So right there's my first adjusting journal entry. That is very critical to do. Okay? Now, next, right there, cost of the online platform. So that's an internally developed asset. So let me go to that now. Okay. Michael commissioned a market. So in order to develop these 4 courses, he commissioned a study to see the demand in January, and then he launches it in October. The study cost $30,000. So that's one expense. Okay? And that's a marketing expense. Right there, bang. So right there, I already have a feeling now that now I'm going to be given a bunch of numbers where I might have to decide, is it going to be capital or is it going to be expense? Along with my R&D and intangible discussion. Okay? And it indicated there was a significant demand, which would allow them to expand its customer base outside Toronto. So that's going to be a pro later on. Well, because in-class in Toronto is a restriction. I can only offer these to Toronto people. But eventually, now this is the 3rd time something has been mentioned about outside Toronto. So now they're hitting you on the head. Here is another case fact to use, pros and cons, strategy, governance, whatever you want to. Now they're telling me the tuition is $150 online. Okay. It's going to start with 400 registrants. The tuition was, they had 400 registrants, $150 for the 4 courses. And we know the 150 was there. We just didn't know how many. So they're saying that going forward, it's going to increase by 40% year 2 and 3 and then stabilize. So again, right there, it's giving me a hint. There's 2 things that are happening here. It's giving me a hint to do a 3-year quant. Year 2 and 3. Otherwise, why are they giving me this information? And then the second part that I have to pay attention to is later on, do I challenge this growth rate? Where did this number come from? I'm the auditor, remember this. I'm not an internal guy putting some quant together for him where I can just say, okay, Michael said it, so let me assume it. I'm the auditor, I want to challenge this. Okay? Because remember, the program just started in October. So based on the results, they developed a detailed plan, budget, blah, 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 to launch the courses. The projections on profitability were based on market research. recovering development cost within 1 year. Okay. The academy contracted a programmer to work with instructional designers and teachers to develop the content and the IT platform to deliver these full online courses. Why are they telling me this? Because all of this cost was specifically incurred for this project. So now I know this is not general cost. This was not just some general employee that they borrowed for 10 hours a week or borrowed whatever. Then it becomes debatable whether I can include their cost in the capitalization or not. Okay, so that is why they're giving me this information. So again, each time ask yourself, and believe me, I mean, I'm going into a lot of detail here, but you will not get this every time in a lot of questions. But with each debrief, as you read this again and you ask yourself, what is the relevance of this to this intangible issue? Or what was the relevance of that October, November, December, 20%, this, that, the numbers, to the deferred revenue issue? Now you will start getting why they gave you the case facts, how you had to use the case facts. That is what really this exam is about. Okay? And then the costs incurred are as follows. So chances are good. So from what I have seen in the past, again, you need to pay attention. If they give you a whole bunch of breakdown of cost, chances are good that it is probably an asset, but you will have to debate which components are expense or capital. From what I've seen, but there's no guarantee. But generally, that's as when I see that right away, I think, okay, you know what? They're going to give me 5 costs. I'll have to argue each one where it falls. Okay, but all of this comes just from practicing cases and seeing more and seeing variations. And this is the information they gave. So he's capitalized $258,000. Right away, I know the market research, that's out. Okay, $30,000. Then I know that they specifically told me the programming, allocation of salary specific for developing of those contents, online course content. Those were specific. So I'm going to put that into my outline as specific. To argue, to capitalize. And then there's another marketing of 10 grand. The web hosting, okay, well, what is that? There's a star there. The web hosting and IT, $6 per registration. Okay, these costs will be continued, so you cannot capitalize that. So because it depends on the number of registrants, blah, blah, blah. So that will be like an ongoing cost that is incurred. Okay. So at the top of the screen, I've said marketing, research phase along with the 30 and 10 grand, and then the 3,000. The monthly cost is obviously an ongoing cost, and we should expense it as we incur. So it says December 31st, 258 was recognized. So we need to review. So again, I'll need to review these internally generated assets and how much can be capitalized on his balance sheet. Michael is pleased to have the values reflected on the balance sheet. So he wants to capitalize. He doesn't want to expense them. Okay. So then again, I'm thinking another discussion point can be down the road is, for if you're going the online route and we're building more courses, then, what's an appropriate amortization period? And I may or may not use all of these case facts, but again, I'm thinking, this is how or what I'm reading into this. Okay, so in my outline, again, 258 was capitalized. And again, you're not going to put all of this as you get better because you're just going to pluck a lot of these numbers straight out of the case. But I'm just doing it here to give you a more detailed. And in fact, I had even created an even more detailed outline, but I condensed it a bit. So the first thing is it's internally generated. So benefit in use. Is there a benefit to it? Yeah, it's already been in use. Can we measure the cost? Yeah, up to 258,000. Okay, so now I'm looking at the criteria. And the criteria come from key case facts, my key case facts. Okay, so again, IT platform, staff, production cost were all specific. Marketing, the two marketing, and then the web hosting is ongoing. I cannot. So again, I'm going to go through the 6 criteria, but here again, all I've written down here: technical, done; intention to use, already in use; ability to use, yeah; financial, no problem; paid for, measured, yeah; future benefit, yes, they already have the courses, they're making money from it, blah, blah, blah. So these are the case facts that are going to help me in my R&D 6 criteria, met or not. Bang, done. And again, there's more here. I'm putting all of this here. But again, when I come down crunch to the exam, I'm not even going to bother, because I would have already known this in my head. Cut and paste the criteria, met. Okay? And so what is my conclusion going to be? That these 3 costs, I have to be very specific in my conclusion. Why I'm not including certain costs, or why I'm including certain costs. So I'm going to argue for both. Why I'm capitalizing certain things and why I'm not. Sometimes maybe there is some leeway. And again, you have to realize they may give you, you can write whatever you want on the question paper. Like I said, this is just an example for you at this point. As you get better, you will write a lot more on the question paper and your outline will be minimal. But again, sometimes they may give you a cost which you may be able to debate. And all they want to see is, candidate identified this and gave me a reasonable argument. That's it. And you got credit for it. That means your adjusting entry doesn't have to be perfect. It probably never will be on complicated issues. On this one, it's relatively simple. Okay? But it's explaining to me why you're expensing or capitalizing it. That is what really helps. And the case facts are helping me do that. And that is what I want to drive home to you guys. Case facts. If you look at this case at the end of it, we've just done the 2 FR issues that are technical, but see how many case facts are already in there that are going to help me answer this. How many case facts we have already seen that are going to help me in my audit plan. So case writing is just not about knowing your technical. It's taking the case facts and applying it to some of the technical and other required and answering them. What was I asked to do? Did I do it? And did I use my case facts to address it? Sounds simple. It's not, but that's what it's all about. So now, this is going to be my adjusting entry. Debit the expense for the year, draw down the asset. So now I got 2 adjusting entries. Then there's these 4 lines thing on tax. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go into that. Okay. Appendix 2, growth opportunities. So now, does anyone have any questions on the 2 FR issues? Speak now, or forever hold your peace. Okay? So that's how I've created my 2 outlines. Now, for the second one, there is obviously no little Excel to create, but I showed you how to create a quick Excel for the first issue. The trick in the first one was, what a lot of people did was, all they did is they took 80% October, 30% November, 20% December, and they said that's all that the revenue. They did not look at the people that were still in the course, and they said that part of the October can be recognized as revenue. Part of November can be recognized. Part of December can be recognized. So we can recognize a supplemental revenue based on POC. That is what they were trying to challenge you in this case, and that is why they gave you that extra information. Then Michael wants to spend $300,000 on the growth opportunities. So right there is a constraint. So he's extremely pleased. Okay, it's exceeded expectations. All right. Sometimes, depending on the case, you could argue that it has or it hasn't. Okay? Because they may give you, a client may make the statement, and then tomorrow you would have to tell him no, that he's not correct or she's not correct. Sorry, there was a question here about adjusting journal entries. You have to tell me, Sita, you have to tell me why each amount is either an expense or capital. And then you can group them all together. So if you have 4 capital, you give me an explanation for each one, total them up, total up the 2 expenses, reverse them. Another critical thing to also realize is what entry am I making? The client has already recognized revenue, so now I have to reverse, has capitalized it, so I have to reverse the amount. Maybe the client hasn't even made an entry. Sometimes that's what they give you. So you have to make an original entry. Again, they can get you over there too. A lot of times I see students who don't realize whether the client's already made an original entry or not, and that they have to make an adjusting entry, or they have to make the original journal entry. So again, pay attention to that. It may say the client hasn't yet, this is the information. Can you help me make the journal entry? Or can you help me decide how much should be capitalized and expense? Then I would make the original entry of capitalizing 215 and expensing 43. So your entry will be different accordingly. So although not all courses are suitable for online, so again there I'm thinking maybe that's a qualitative. So now I'm thinking qualitative. Okay? That he wants to do 6 more classroom course, 6 more online courses. 6 of the classroom courses can be converted. Okay? So pay attention to that. So now he's taking exactly 6 of the classroom, and these are not different. So right there, I am thinking, well, you know what? If he's offering the online for 150 and the classroom for 400, which later on you'll see in the course, in the costing, why wouldn't I go online? Okay? So cannibalization could potentially come in there. In addition, being offered. So case fact, in my quant, I have to add 6 more courses. Doesn't matter where you make the entry. Okay, you can make it in Word or Excel as long as you apply it when you need to. Development cost per course would be similar to those incurred for the 4 courses. So how much did we incur for the 4 courses? 215,000. So how much per course? 215. We know that amount. So 215 divided by 4. And if I'm doing 6, multiply by 6. So again, this is why they gave me that line. Michael hopes we will only need, hopes. See, again, he's not sure, or he thinks. This is something that he thinks is correct, that you may prove him wrong. That you will need to update this only every 5 years. But already, your online is using part of the in-classroom for registration, part of it. and then it's going external. So I'm already thinking, wow, what a load on it. How will it last that long? So the tuition remains 150, okay? And Michael believes that the registration and growth rate would apply to these, the 40%. Okay, so now I know I have to do a 3-year quant for online. So in my outline, and again, you're going to pop this, and I did not do the Excel because I want people to write this out for their markers, it's going to be simple. 400 people will be in each online, roughly. 2 years is going to grow 40% each. So it's going to go from 400 to 560, and then another 40% the next year. 6 classes. So basically it's going to be 150 people times 6 times 400 in each class. That's going to be my revenue. Okay, and then what are going to be my costs? My costs are going to be simple. Okay, the online support is $6 per student. So it's going to be 6 times 400, whatever in year 1, and times the number of classes or whatever. Okay, and you're going to extrapolate that out for 3 years. And you're going to assume the same mark. And he said there's going to be 30,000 marketing, which you can either apply in year 1 or apply over 3 years. Doesn't matter. It's a small amount. The key here is that there's another key portion of the cost, which is the 215,000 divided by 4 courses times 6. That's going to be the cost of building the platform for the additional 6 courses, which I will incur in year 1. So when I'm doing my quant, that is going to be one of my key expenses in year 1 only. So again, my year 1 is going to be highly impacted by that big amount. And at the same time, earlier on, Michael said that I have only 300,000 to spare. Okay? Does anyone have questions on that quant yet? Yes, no? Okay, why don't we take like a 2-minute break? If you have a bunch of questions, you can pop them up there. And then we'll go through the second MA, the pros and cons, and the rest of the stuff. Okay? Hi everyone, I'm back. Yeah, no, it's $6 per student. So it doesn't matter if you're in 3 courses, it still takes online support for each course. So it doesn't matter whether it's the same student or 3 different students, okay? And if you make minor mistakes in the quant, it's not a big deal. Like in this particular instance, if you forgot the intangible asset of 322,000, then you're SOL. You're not going to get to competent because your numbers are going to be totally out of whack. Okay? Now, I want you to realize one thing. The whole idea of doing this particular webinar is to show you how I'm reading, thinking through what they are giving me, and then discussing. Okay? So what you need to do, I am not giving you the actual quant or the actual how I did. The only one I did was for the first FR issue. Because people sometimes ask me, how did I just pop the information directly into Excel instead of writing it all out in Word and then moving it into Excel. The whole idea of this webinar, let me again be very clear, is to show you how I'm reading it and I'm creating a basic outline. And then after that comes the actual writing it out. So for the online class, I've given you all the numbers. Now all I'm going to move is, like I said, move it into Excel. Number of courses, number of people in each one, times the fee, boom, that's my revenue. It grows 40% a year. And then my $6 per student is my expense, and the one-time capital cost, and the 30,000 marketing. I'll put into my quant. So the idea here is to give you this start, and then so that later on you can take a clean copy. Once you understand how I am thinking through the case facts and the issues, how I create this, then you take a clean copy of it yourself, and then you write it out and give it to your mentor for marking. Okay, so translating it from your outline to your answer. Otherwise, this would turn into a 3.5-hour webinar, probably. So now I'm going to go to the additional classrooms. And again, if you noticed, there was no incredible management accounting quant there, was there? It was simple. There was no, you didn't have to do some major calculations here or there in break even, contribution margin. So there is always the issue of, there are going to be 1 or 2 that will have that contribution margin, break even, outsourcing, whatever. But then there will be, a couple that will be simple like this on a case. How can you manage this? I already explained in the beginning. It takes practice. You start off at a certain level, and then as you get better at reading, planning, outlining, it all condenses. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens over 3, 4, 5, 6 months, depending on how many cases you write. But as you debrief each one better, in your debrief, if you do this, so let us say you wrote this and you bombed the case, you go back and either you debrief it with your mentor or by yourself, but this is how I would debrief it, and I would recreate my outline before I rewrite the answer. And that is how I really learn. What information are they giving me and how I'm going to use it? That's all they want to see. So now, additional classrooms. Okay, in 2015, they offered 40 different blah, blah, blah at this cost. The key thing here is the $400 and 20 students. Okay, and this is sorry, again, I didn't put this in red, but this part here should be to be used in the quant. Okay, the 20 students and the 400. Historically, they've operated at 100% capacity. So why are they telling me this? So now maybe I'm thinking, maybe that cannibalization issue is coming in here. For the first time in years, we have seen these offerings drop in November and December to 80%. So again, how does this tie into what the rest of the case facts that they've given me? Two things to use. One is, when I do my quant, I probably want to do 180%. That's a hint from there. Okay, so I'll do a quant that using 20 students or using 16 students, because if it's going to be 80% going forward, there's no point in doing a quant for just 20 students. I want to do 20 and 80%, 16 students. And the second fact, that it dropped to 80% beginning in November, when in October they started offering these other courses, and he wants to offer them in the same courses that are in class and online. Clearly there's going to be cannibalization. Okay, so right there's so much qualitative SG information for me. Besides that, Michael wonders what triggered this drop. So I have to answer this for him either in my pros and cons or in my SG discussion point, and whether it will continue, and it may continue. So again, this will be in my SG discussion. Okay. So Michael believes that there is a market demand to support 80 additional offerings. So there'll be 80 more that I'm going to do. So now my quant's going to be 80 additional offerings, $400 in tuition, 20 people in a course at 100% capacity, and 16 students at 80%. Okay, so these are going to be my two quants. Now, some of these costs are coming in here. Additional offerings would require rental of additional classroom space. The only lease within the academy is for a 3-year period. So right there, there's a con for me in my pros and cons. So again, when I'm doing my qualitative, my quant, if I see these kind of things, then I know can create pros and cons. If they don't give me this and they're strictly giving me just numbers, there is nothing to talk about in pros and cons. And again, that is something I want you to pay attention to, which I discussed in tips, or I will discuss at the end of this case. Pay attention to that. You do that in your debrief. That is why I tell people the debriefing takes 2, 3, 4 different hours for each case, but you learn so much and then you rewrite it. Okay, so then $8,500 per month. So now that's going to be my cost, $8,500 times 12, bang, right there. The additional would provide spaces for 160 offerings. Why are they giving me this? When he said he wants to do only 80. Does that mean that if I, in years 2 and 3 or more, if I expand, I have room? Or at this point, if it's not used, can I sublet it? Pros and cons again. And then he says additional instructor time would be $2,400 per offering. Okay. So now in my outline, again, clean and simple. 80 courses, $400. I'm going to do, and now I don't have to do multiple years because there's no growth rate. There's just 100% and 80%. My expenses are simple, $8,500 per month at 12 and $2,400 per teacher. And then I have to conclude on which of the two options provide a better return. That's going to be my quant part. So my conclusion to Michael is going to be, for the online, it's going to be blah, blah, blah. I'm going to assume his growth rates are all of that. The big hiccup is the one-time capitalization cost. But then years 2 and 3, that's what I want to kind of highlight to him. And for online, 100% and 80%. So now, throughout the case, I've kind of identified pros and cons, blah, blah, blah. I've stressed that. So now I'm going to go and discuss what are the things that I've identified, okay? And again, this is quite extensive. And if I do an outline like this, this is going to be my answer itself. So in classroom may not even be 80% down the road with cannibalization. There's a potential to sublet for 3 years or expand if needed. Okay? On the other hand, my classroom has been proven profitable. It's a proven and profitable commodity. This one has just been in existence for 3 months. Online, on the other hand, can be done anytime, anywhere, expansion across Canada. So unlimited potential. Michael wants to spend only $300,000. 322 is what I predicted. But I can turn around and tell him that if you want to stay under your 300, expand to 5 courses. Because each course is 215 divided by 4. Correct? So why don't I just do 5 courses? And if I do 5 courses, I'll fall under the 300 mark. Then I told you 5 years to update the system. That's questionable. What if it's every 3 years? What is the cost for that? Under pros and cons. My online is using the same platform. So I'm going to question the load on the system. Is the system equipped to handle that load? Especially now that they've added 4, but now they're going to add another 6. And how much money are they going to need to spend on that? Could there be other online or other maintenance expenses that are not in there? So now I can conclude either one. I could say could do both. Depends on, how the numbers come out. Okay? But one of the key things, again, that I'm thinking of is realize that the online, the two things, the key things that are in my mind for online, and it's going to come up in my SNG and EO, is it's only been in existence for 3 months and you're predicting a 40% growth rate. Those are kind of things that are creating doubt to go full steam with online. The pro for that is I can do it across Canada, which I have not really done. Like I haven't marketed it across Canada as such. Right now I see that there are a lot of addresses outside Canada, but I haven't gone ahead and done that. Okay, so what I did is before I go into the assurance, I want to talk about the strategy and governance, because strategy and governance flows from my quant and qualitative. So now, regardless of whether I do the online or the in-class, what do I want to highlight to Michael? How will the online course impact the in-class? He asked that question. Well, I need to answer it. Okay, it's already dropping since November because of that timing, and those were the case facts. So what will another 6 courses do? I don't know, but that's my question to Michael. Time will tell if you do it, especially if you do it for the exact same that are inline and online are the same. Okay. Then there's a big option. Expand across Toronto. I mean, it's across Canada, not just Toronto, for online. That's a huge market there. And even though some people are accessing, it hasn't advertised yet. So the growth opportunities are tremendous. So that's another long-term thinking. But I have to also question the 40% growth online because it's only been in effect for 3 months. So it might be a seasonal phenomena, Who knows? You know, there are a lot of seasonal phenomena. Think about it. One of the most important in our industry is our CPD. How many of us come November decide, oh my God, I don't have my 20 hours CPD mandatory hours, so I better do it by November, December. And there's a massive rush in December to do CPD. So if the institute looked at the revenue from CPD by general members only in November, December, it would be really high. But you can't base it just on those 2 months. So again, you know, I'm giving you an example of how they can throw something else in another day. Then I'm saying, well, with such a high demand and growth rate, if the content is similar in class and online, why is there a big difference between 150 and 400? Why can I not pick a number in between and drive my revenues for online even more? Like maybe 200, 250, whatever. I have to give the in-class a premium, definitely, because there's physically an instructor there. Yeah, but again, this is a brand new market research. This is not based on historical industry stats. Then potential conclusion could be, from a strategic point of view, I also want to try and give him a conclusion if I can. You know, perhaps wait a little while longer, continue with the 4, maybe don't add 6 more, something in between, and see how it plays out. And then see how the cannibalization affects it. Now, my conclusion that I'm giving you is not the right or wrong one. It makes sense. And that's what's on the marking guide. When it says it made a conclusion, supported, a reasonable basis. You do that, you're laughing. Again, that's another thing I want to drive home to you guys. The why, the so what, the conclusions, you know, my assumptions, all of those kind of things. As long as I can justify it and it makes sense, I'm in good shape. Okay? Now, again, so things like the management accounting, things like the FR issues, they're going to give you in, you know, on one specific page or 3/4 of a page. That kind of, we saw that. Things like my risk approach materiality, I'm going to have to pick throughout the case and populate it. As you guys are probably having written other cases, you know, have to realize that sometimes when they ask you to discuss control issues, they will give you again another paragraph like they did for FR. Most of the time, and they'll tell you, okay, you know what, we had issues with our PPP cycle, and then they will give you, you know, like 2-3 paragraphs, and then just like we read this case, you're going to read it and tear apart, and you're going to pick case facts and say, yeah, bang, this is a problem. Here's the impact recommendation. Here's a problem, impact recommendation. So for certain things, you will get your answer right from that piece of information given there. For risk, I'm pulling it from different parts that I've seen throughout the question. So as I'm reading the question, I've highlighted it, and now I'm putting it in here. Okay? Anybody have any questions? You guys are awfully quiet. Okay, so now I'm going to go and discuss risk. Now, most important thing, remember, excepting for management accounting, and FR. On day 3, it's breadth. So the number of points you need to discuss to get competent compared to day 2 are not that great. So for example, let me give you some. If you're an assurance student and on a day 2 case where you have to discuss risk, you probably need 5 or maybe 6 points to hit 5 points to hit competent. On a day 3 case, probably 3 points might do it. Because it's a breadth. They want to see if you can address 2 or 3 points reasonably well and move on. Same thing for SG on day 3, tax, finance. Okay? So again, I'm not going to get a lot of meat out of the case to build 5-6 risk points, go into depth in approach, have a lot of adjustments, have a ton of procedures and stuff like that if they ask me. So again, what did I highlight? From my FR issues, first of all, there's a risk because of revenue recognition and intangibles because of the errors I found. And they could extend to other FR transactions if there are any. But at least they are there in these 2. Okay? Then, although I'm using part of the old system, there's the extension, not only to the third party, but an extension to the new system for things like registration, completion, expiry, access, all of those things. They create risk because they're not tested and we'll have to test them, document them. Okay? If we are building, and I didn't actually put this in here, but another point I just thought of is, if I'm building, 6 more courses, that's again something new. I want to make sure that all my costs are included in my intangible asset. Then another risk point comes in is privacy. How have they tested access, passwords in the system for the online and the controls around it? Because it's a third-party provider also. So again, we'll have to test it, right? So again, I can conclude the risk is higher or the risk has gone up over last year because depending on the points that I've made, clearly all these four or 5 points that I've highlighted clearly are telling me that there is elements of risks in all of these things. Well, you can't go into too much detail. Amortization, 5 years, yeah, that's already part of your intangible cost. Okay, so you can't go into too much detail. So you can't tell me, oh, we'll have to look at the intangibles and make sure all the expenses are there, the amortization is right, blah, blah, blah. That is kind of procedures. I find a lot of people mistake risks and approach in terms of procedures. We will have to do this. We will have to check amortization. We will have to check whether it's an expense or capital. We'll have to check this, that. Those are procedures. You'll have to learn to distinguish between that. And that is where, again, debriefing the case with your mentor in the beginning is critical. Okay? So that was my risks. Any questions on that so far? People are awfully quiet. So on all my other webinars, I get tons of questions. All right. Doesn't matter, you do approach first, materiality, really inconsequential. Very simple. For approach, control, substantive, combine. 3 things you're going to tell me. But why? What are the case facts that tell me that I can use controls? I can rely on controls. What are the case facts or issues that tell me I have to do substantive work? And where? That is what I want to see. Everybody knows what a control-based approach is. Everybody knows what substantive work is. But tell me, using case facts, what areas am I going to now apply this and then conclude? That is again what I want to see. And that is the whole point of asking you to do an approach. And again, you don't have to hit all of these points. And depending on how they mark it, for example, they may say, you talked about, like for risk, for example, they may say you got 3 good risk points, you got competent. Again, they mark it, and I'm sure Mike or other people have talked about it, depending on how they mark it. So, 10,000 people are writing this exam. They take a sample and say, all right, okay, on average, you know what? 75% of the people or 60% of the people put down 3 valid points. So that's going to be our benchmark for competent. Now, if 20% of the people or 10% of the people put down 3 points and 60% put down 2 points, then maybe they'll go with that. But that's a discussion for another day. The point is, I tell students simply this: if you have gone through the case facts and identified something, how long does it take you to put down one bullet, one line? 30 seconds. So in my case fact, if I've already identified 5 risk points, just write them down. Boom, bullet, 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 done. Or take your outline and expand your outline, done. Just don't try and make stuff up. And that is why it's so important to pay attention to case facts. So for approach, controls, we know that the current system and online, we know that online is using part of the current system, partially. Okay? So we would need to test controls on the new online portion, the registration, privacy, access, okay, to see if we can rely on them. And also, because they are probably high volume, it's something that we might want to do control testing on. Yeah, it's been a client for many years, so that's going to be a pro in your risk, but all your other risk factors outweigh that. Okay. Then the other part is, for FR, we will need to do detailed testing in the intangible areas of the cost amortization. Somebody mentioned that earlier. So in certain areas, we will have to do more substantive work. And now I'm telling you where and why. Okay. Then for the online revenue stream, again, because we found issues, we probably should think substantive, but because again, it's so heavily, there's so many students in there and it's so voluminous, we may want to think about testing controls to rely on them partially. So again, I'm trying to give some areas where I can use controls, some areas where I have to do substantive work. Okay? So this is where testing intangibles, procedures for testing, that's for another day. There are simple, see, again, you're getting mixed up between approach versus procedures. Okay, so under my approach for intangibles, the only thing that I would pay attention to is, all I would say is, we have to make sure that they're capitalizing the right amount, useful life, the amortization. Then in my procedures based on case facts, I would go into more details as to what specifically I'm going to do. Unfortunately, we're not doing procedures in this case. But I mean, my main suggestion to all students is that there are a lot of cases. Ask your mentor to pick one which is going to challenge procedures and do it. And that's what I do with my students. And then I clearly explain to them why I'm picking procedures related to FR issues and other issues. Okay? And then materiality. In this case, it's simple. But again, remember, this is day 3, so it's not complicated. User, very simple, Chang. In this case, there's no bank. It's not complicated. There are no covenants, no other issues here. We're given net income. I've made my 2 adjustments. And I'm off. I do my calculation. Okay? So the whole point of doing my FR and my adjusting entries relatively clean is over here. It's going to make a difference when I'm doing my materiality calculation. Or it's going to make a difference when I'm doing, if they have covenants, or if they have loan, and the loan is based on, 50% of AR, 50% of inventory, and you're making adjustments to AR inventory, and that impacts your credit limit. So again, it depends on case facts. That is why it's important to do your adjusting journal entries, period. Doesn't matter, just do them. And then later on, depending on what they ask you to do, you apply it later on in the case. In this case, they only asked you to discuss materiality. Okay? If, for example, if Michael had a loan and the loan was based on assets, I'm just making something up, then what am I going to do is, if I had a big adjustment to the assets, let's say then they will give you an FR issue that will impact the assets, so that you will recalculate the loan and then tell me, most likely, guess what? The loan was, $1 million based on unaudited financials. He's sitting at, let's say, very close to $1 million. Now I've made an adjustment to AR and inventory of 100,000 total. So the maximum he can draw is 900,000. So he's going to come up with 100,000. That's how they kind of tie the covenant or whatever to the FR issue. And that's how you need to start thinking when you read the case or when you debrief the case, if you don't pick it up in the beginning. And they will throw more of these at you on the day 2 case. Okay? Like when you talk about procedures, it's challenging because what I tell people is that your procedures are going to be there. So for FR, if I had my issue here with FR was what? Calculating deferred revenue. So my procedures are going to be around making sure that that number is correct. What went into that number? Making sure that October registrations happen throughout the year. Okay, that's one. That was one. Making sure that only 20% are still in there, 80% are done. So, going back and checking that. So the triggers that help me conclude on whether I don't recognize revenue or those kind of things, those are going to help me build my case facts. Okay. Does anybody have any questions on this? So if you're an assurance student, procedures are critical to understand. Okay, because a lot of times people just give me generic procedures, test cutoff for revenue, this, that. Doesn't matter. In this case, you have to give me specifically procedures. If you were to do in the FR issue here, give me specific procedures, okay, that I will do to verify that the 33,000 is deferred and the balance is revenue. For the intangibles, for example, what procedures? One of the key procedures I can do is, they said that they hired these people specifically for building this platform. So guess what? I want to look at support for that. Did they specifically hire them, or did they move them from another department? So now they moved them, looking at their timesheets, whatever. They work there full time. Looking at the cost of the specific IT platform, verifying those things. So those are the specific procedures that I'm going to use if I have to discuss procedures in this case. So now you see the difference between procedures and approach. And again, procedures, like, you can go into more specific. Then there are other things. There may be other issues there. For example, I don't know, I'm just picking something. If you have a bank loan, I can give trivial procedures for that. Send a bank confirm, verify the amount, verify the interest rate, verify if there are any covenants, do the recalculations. But these are specific things because these are specific parts of the bank loan. Yes, that's the whole point. You need to do the adjusting entry and apply it to the client's net income to calculate the new net income. And a lot of times you may go into a loss, and then you have to come up with a new basis. Do I use revenue? Do I use assets? And again, as long as you give me a reasonable explanation and you tell me the appropriate range. So for revenue, you're saying 0.5 to 1% or whatever, and you're not saying 10%. As long as you do that and give me a reasonable explanation why revenue, then you got credit for it. Okay? So some general comments. A few more minutes will be done. So the whole idea is, now that I've gone through and explained to you the thought process, I would strongly suggest you take a clean copy and write this case. At least that's what I've requested my students to do. Well, they clearly asked you in this case to discuss governance issues. Okay? And as you do more questions, a lot of these things start falling in place. As you do more questions, the procedures start to make sense. As you do more questions, you learn how to do that. And that is the reason why I tell people, start your case writing. And people are not doing that. A lot of people are not doing that. If you really look at this question, how much real core technical did you need to know? For me, it was the revenue recognition and intangibles. And those were basic FR. Your risk, approach, materiality are all fundamental. Your SG, again, fundamental. Your management quant was a simple quant. Sometimes it's a little more challenging. And then there was your pros and cons. So how much of it was really like intense technical that you had to really do? Not much. And that is why I tell people, start your case writing now so you can learn all of this. Well, Tram, I'll leave it up to you. When you hand in your case, we'll find out. Okay? So if it's 80 yes, that's what you would do, probably. No. You're going to, okay, sorry. So let's focus here. Creating an outline for the marker. So what I would like is, when I like to see a case, I'd like to see your outline. Okay? Because an outline right away will tell me what your answer is going to look like. So it always helps the marker to see the outline, your thought process. How are you taking the case facts and building your required EOs? A lot of people pick the EOs, but then they can't build the case. They can't use the case facts and answer the rest. Yes, your quant. So again, when they mark the quant, it depends on so for example, each expense or revenue item, depending on how critical it was. If you did it incorrectly, again, their marking can be flexible. If there were 5 revenue expense items and you did one of the smaller ones incorrectly or whatever, they're not fussed about it. But if it's a big amount and you mess it up, it obviously affects your conclusions and your calculations, and you can be stuck at reaching competent. So what you need to do when you debrief is go through, reread the case, and try and recreate an outline. And that's why I tell people it'll take you like up to 3 hours on an 80-minute case or more. Recreate the outline for yourself and then rewrite the case. Focus on the case facts. Why was this case facts given? Why did I miss it? Your learning will come from what you did not do, what you missed. And recreating the outline after the fact also helps because it trains your brain to get into this condensed form and to make sure you're capturing all the case facts. So I already discussed your challenge for time now because you're not practicing. Okay? When I do my first case, it's going to take me, I don't know. If I do it in a hurry, I'm going to bomb it totally. If I take twice the amount of time, I might get, quite a bit of this outline, quite a bit of case facts I'll pick up. I may not write it that well, but that'll start improving. So as I get better, now I'm going to read the case facts that I need to read. So right away, with time, with each case, I'm going to improve 4 or 5% time-wise and quality-wise. Because now your reading speed is improved in the sense you're picking up the case facts, bang, bang, bang. You know where it goes once you know what your EOs are. And now you're writing only the relevant stuff. So you're working on multiple levels. You're working on improving your quants, how to do them faster, how to take them directly from the case, put it into Excel and manipulate them. But all of these things only happen with practice. I cannot just give you something magical that you can do tomorrow on the next case that will help you. It's with practice that happens. Okay? So as you get better, you'll only put the relevant and the key technical stuff in there, the right technical. I already discussed this. Realize how much of this case was technical in ESL. How did I quickly do the Excel? I noted some key numbers. Now this was an easier Excel. Some are a little more complicated. But again, I took the fundamental numbers. I didn't rewrite them. I either circled them on my paper or whatever, and then boom, transported them into Excel. And then I created my cells to manipulate them. And then I put just a quick short one-liner bullet explaining what my calculation is. Do not have a laundry list for your outline. That is absolutely useless. Because people, as they read the case, they say, okay, this bullet is relevant for this. This is a bullet, okay. This bullet here. No. Put that relevant bullet within the AO as you go. That'll help you build your answer. Many cases have a flow to it. Remember that. Okay? And your adjusting journal entry or your original journal entry will have an impact. There's a reason why they're asking you to do that. Okay? Always put the key case fact in your outline for the technical. So what is going to make or break my technical? Your performance for the FR. Performance is not met. And then I go into my POC. We talked about the journal entry or adjusting journal entry. In the beginning, your outline will take a lot longer. But by the time you go from May to August, it'll significantly shrink. Whether you're writing whether you're highlighting stuff on the paper, starring it, whatever. A lot of times for control issues, I'll put C1, C2, C3 on the paper itself. And that becomes actually my outline for day 3. It all depends on each individual. But by doing this, I'm making sure I'm capturing all the case facts. I'm putting it in the right place. I'm formatting. I'm planning it well. And then I write my answer. And all of this may take, 25, 40% more time today. But with each case, if I consistently practice this in writing, in my debriefing, it keeps condensing and shrinking every time. That is what I want to drill into your heads. Okay? So there are a lot of fundamental things that you can do to succeed or get really far in this exam. It's not just all about knowing IFRS 15 and stuff like that. It's way, way beyond that. Again, I explained when do I do my quants. If there are no case facts, pay attention to that in your debrief. Do not, okay? So those were generally most of my comments or tips on case writing walkthrough. Do people have questions? How many cases do you think you need to do? Oof. Honestly, I don't know. It depends on the individual. Some people that have come through the PEP modules, they have some case writing experience. If you've done through university, if you have never done cases, it's different for each individual. That's why writing, submitting to your mentor at a regular interval and practicing in between, that's critical. Okay, do people have other questions? I think I'm ready to wrap up here. So again, the purpose was not to give you a solution, but to take you to the outline. Okay? Later on as we progress in the summer, when we have our 7-day live session in July, we will be doing day 2, day 1 ASPE IFRS cases that will show you how to write a really good solution. So again, the sessions kind of have a logical progression to it. Now, Alvarez, after you do this process, like you said, write the case, debrief, rewrite it, do all of that. I know some of my students, after they've done, even some that had no clue, that literally had no clue, even if they've written cases before, and their first case was absolutely, let us say, wasn't at all good. Let's put it that way. After they went through this process with me, by the time they hit their second or third case, massive improvement, massive I'm talking about. Then it came down to them just missing some case facts, missing, having a little bit of time challenge, having a little bit of technical challenges maybe because they are not up to speed there on some issues. Then those were the small areas that they need to start working on. But this is the foundation you need to build upon. Outline is not mandatory. Like I said, this would disappear. I would not have this when I come exam time. In fact, some of y'all, if you've already been studying since January, I know, do not need to be at this stage. You're probably past this stage. So for some of you that you might have found this webinar even, a bit elementary. But based on what I'm seeing with my students, that is why I suggested to Mike a few weeks ago, I think we need to do one with an actual CFE case where you see 6, 7, 8 AOs, different AOs, and we walk you through and show you what you need to do. And then all these tips that I'm giving you are things that I see consistently people doing wrong or that they should be paying attention to. So when you get a copy of this webinar or whatever it is, pay attention to the general comments at the end I made and also to the tips. Okay? Do people have, I think there's a couple of slides, prep formula, We have an extensive program, Capstone 1, Capstone 2, practice cases. But the thing is, you have to take advantage of the one-on-one at the beginning. There's some additional information. Again, great pass rate. And again, speaking myself, for my students, I do know that those that put in the effort, in the last 3 years at least, 85 to 90% of those people have passed who have put in the effort. Easily, 90% of the people will pass. You don't put in the effort, it's not going to work. Well, these webinar slides, I think, are sent out, or you'd have to ask support for that. Okay. This is my email address. Please try not to text me. I prefer emails because then I can keep track of, even if you're not my student, I don't mind you sending me a question. I'm fine with trying to support you. It's just I don't like conflicting something that your own mentor is saying. But if you have questions, I'm more than happy to answer an email. You can always email me something. All right? I think that was it. So I sincerely hope you guys found this useful. And if you have any questions, let me know. And for my students, like I said, I've asked them to take a clean copy and rewrite the case and submit it. Okay? I think you also have an option to rate this session, whether you liked it, you didn't like it, whatever. If you have questions that you did not understand, that I went through either too fast or whatever, I'm more than happy to actually send me an email at this email address and I will address it for you. It may take me a few days, but I'm more than happy to answer, especially when some people ask different procedures to risk points or approach points and stuff like that. I can give you guidance as to what direction or where to look for more information and stuff like that. So I'm always more than happy to help out. Okay? All right. So good luck to everybody in your courses. I'm probably going to do a couple of more webinars depending on how receptive people were on this. Okay, I am, and like we said, we have the live 7 days in the summer, and that is where we get more into how to write and answer properly. We do show you, how to read and plan a little bit, but the focus will shift then on how to write a proper answer to get competent. How much you have to write, how condensed, how well, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So, well, I'm glad you liked it. You always can, please rate the session however you choose. Okay? And again, like I said, I'm always available via email. I prefer email. And I'd be happy to help anybody that wants any help. Okay? So thank you, everybody. You guys have a great night. And today's what, Tuesday? Have a great week. But please start writing cases and do 1 or 2 with your mentor. Debrief it. It's worth it. That's what I'm trying to get. That was the whole reason I did it. Because I'm being honest here. I have some students who are not making avail of this opportunity. All the mentors and prep are really good. And they can give you excellent feedback on how to improve. Okay, so take that opportunity and do it. Build a strong base now, and you will see that your learning curve will really improve fast. Okay, so good luck to everybody, and you guys have a great day. Okay, good night.